Chapter 10, slides 27 to 33. Yay, home stretch! Congratulations! This is the last set of slides for the semester. What we're going to do in these slides is talk a little bit about the design of a synthesis. If I have a target molecule, how does a chemist look at it and think to themselves, how can I make that? Right? Especially if the molecule is not commercially available. Maybe the molecule is of interest to some scientist to study further as a material. Maybe it's a possible pharmaceutical that nature makes, but man, nature makes it might take 100 years for nature to make a very small quantity of that material. And maybe we don't want to, spoil our resources. A lot of interesting compounds may come from coral reefs or plants that are rare. So we don't want to destroy our natural resources just so that we can get more of that compound. We can make it ourselves. I hope you guys have recognized by now that carbon is carbon, hydrogen is hydrogen, right? If I can put the molecule together the same way nature does, we may not do it the same way, but the end result, if it's the same molecule that we're talking about, it will be the same molecule because carbon is carbon, hydrogen is hydrogen. So what goes into a synthesis? I like to think of it as the three pillars to design, and that's time, cost, and yield. I've had my own experiences where I wanted to run a reaction, and I went to the literature to see how other people had run a similar reaction, and the best I could find was that this thing would take 3 days to complete. 3 days. Now, I don't know about you, but I've gone into the lab many times and failed many times. And waiting 3 days to only find out that your reaction didn't go the way you wanted or that it was a complete failure is a long time to wait, right? What a waste of time. I mean, I love reactions that, happen within a 3-hour teaching lab, right? I mean, think about the labs that we're going to have you guys run during a lab time. They're going to start and finish during a nice 3-hour frame. That doesn't always occur. A lot of times things take 8 hours or 12 hours. Might depend on the size of the reaction you're running. If you're running, 5 kilograms versus 2 milligrams versus, a huge industrial vat, that could take some time to get all of your reagents to convert from starting material to product. Sometimes you have to consider the cost of the reagents. How expensive are the materials? How rare are the materials? Are you using rare metals? Maybe you're only using them catalytically and not stoichiometrically. Maybe you have to heat your entire system up to a very high temperature, which costs energy for your company. Or maybe you have to cool it down to really low temperatures, which also costs lots of money. Yield is another thing. I mean, if you're going to run a reaction and you get the product, but you only ever get it at best at 30% yield, you're not going to be making a heck of a lot of material very quickly. You're going to have to keep running the reaction and maybe wasting materials. And then there's managing the waste streams. How environmentally friendly are your byproducts or the reagents you're using for that matter? What goes into your waste bucket and how much does it cost to get rid of at the end of the day? These systems are very, very complex. And maybe you could take a look at some of the reactions we've covered and think to yourself, man, if I had to run this in large amounts, that wouldn't be good from a company standpoint. I can think of oxymercuration for one. Not a big popular reaction to run at an industrial plant, right? The cost of getting rid of all that mercury. Who wants to work with mercury anyway? So design is a really interesting thing once we can start talking about it, and now we can because you guys have a lot of reactions under your belt. We've done a lot of chemistry now. Let's have some practice now thinking like an organic chemist. I want to introduce a new arrow to you. This is called the Retrosynthetic Arrow. It means think backwards from. That's literally what it means, is think backwards from. And this retrosynthetic design, it's an art, and it was sort of, thought about in the 70s and 80s. E.J. Corey published a book on the art of retrosynthesis, and it teaches chemists to think backwards For years, chemists were looking at a molecule they wanted to make, finding something on the shelves that maybe kind of looked like it, and tried to work forwards, pushing and, trying to get it to be what they wanted it to be. And what was discovered was that if you think about your target and work backwards to simpler materials, you can actually shorten your synthetic design, fewer steps. Fewer steps usually means less time, fewer reagents, and higher yields. So fewer steps in a synthesis is a really, really achievable goal. If you could do your reaction, or if you could do your synthesis in 1 step versus 4 steps, you're saving a lot of time, energy, cost, everything, right? So the mantra is fewer steps, the better. Think backwards from your target back till you get to some commercially available reagents, and it is what it is. I think that's kind of a good way of looking at it. So I wanted to introduce you to that arrow. It's a very specific type of arrow. Let's turn this around. And let's look at this first practice example together. So my target compound is on the right. What I like to do is, in these cases, I'm helping you along a bit. I'm giving you the starting material. So I'm helping you to see that, this is what you could start with from a functional group perspective. Now we're going to start with 1-butyne. You think to yourself, an alkyne. Do I know any ways of turning an alkyne into a carbonyl? Ooh, I do. Maybe I could start listing them, right? An alkyne, I could do like oxymercuration with water and acid. Oh, I also could do hydroboration. I don't know if it's going to matter. And then do the workup with the NaOH and the peroxides. I could do the hydration, like H2SO4 and water. All of those will turn the alkyne into an enol, which will tautomerize to a carbonyl. But hold on. Carbon 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, goodness. I have more carbons than I started with. Where did those come from? I have to make carbon-carbon bonds. Well, if you remember, lucky for us, making carbon-carbon bonds, I've got an alkyne with the terminal proton. I know that I can deprotonate those with NaNH2. And then those can react with a carbon electrophile. Now I want 2 carbons, carbon 5 and 6. How do I get it to react with carbon 5? Well, I just have to put a leaving group on it. All right, I think I can do this. I've laid out all of the reactions that I know how to work with, and so I'm just going to put them in order now. First, I'm going to react it with a base. The base is going to deprotonate my alkyne, and then I'm going to add ethyl bromide, carbon 5 and 6. This is going to do an SN2 reaction. So we did acid-base chemistry to remove the proton. We next employed an SN2 reaction. I am now here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is a very symmetrical molecule. It actually won't matter which one of these I choose, because if I put the oxygen at 4 or the oxygen at 3, it doesn't really matter. So you get to choose. Get to choose one of them from below, because it doesn't matter which way I put the oxygen. And I've just designed a 2-step route. This is a 2-pot reaction. The first pot is the base, acid-base SN2, and then I could probably stop this, purify it, maybe run a column, run an NMR to make sure that I have what I have, and then after it's pured, take it on to the next step. And that's what synthesis is all about in the lab: design and then execution. The remainder of these slides have a bunch of fun examples, just having you utilize your skills. Try to use all the things that you've learned to go from starting material to product for each of these, and pay attention when stereochemistry is given.